The if function is a powerful function in Excel that allows you to return a value if a condition is met. So it is a formula that you deploy when you need a condition to be met, and it will return the opposite if the condition is not met. So that is the if function. I'll be using this data set to explain the if function. So here we have a sales rep performance data, and we're told that any sales above target attracts 5% sales bonus, which means that a condition must be met. Your sales must be higher than your target for you to be able to get this sales bonus. So that is a conditional statement. So with that, we can use if function to perform this task. So there are two ways, in Excel, when you want to deploy a formula, there's usually two ways to do that. It's either you type the formula directly into your cell, or you go through the formula bar. We're going to be looking at the two methods with explaining simple if. So let's take the first one, typing in the formula into the relevant cell. So here we'll take row 3 first, where Mohammed's details is contained. So under bonus, let's type in our formula. So our formula is, in Excel, we want to type any formula, it starts with equal sign. So equal if. So if our sales, Mohammed's sales is in cell C3. So if Mohammed's sales, don't forget that's our logical test, because according to what we have here, Excel is saying put in your logical text, then value if true, value is false. So we're going to looking at our logical test. What's our logical test? That our sales is greater than our target. So is C3 greater than D3? Now, if that condition is met, what do we want Excel to return as a true value? So now we'll go back to our statement and says that if any sales above target attract 5%, so what we want it to return is 5% of sales. Now, what if this condition is not met? What do we want Excel to return for us? We want it to return 0, because if you are not meeting your target, if your sales is not above your target, then you don't get any bonus. So that's 0. So close our bracket and we'll press enter. That gives us this bonus value for Mohammed. Then we can highlight for Paul, and then we have that figure. So the other method that we can also deploy is going through the formula bar. So let's go to the formula, click on the cell, go to the formula bar, go to logical functions, and go to if. A dialog box will come up, just like we have it here. I always advise people, if you get to a point where your formula seems to elude you, go through the dialog box, go through this process, because this process Excel will explain each of the parameters to you. Take for instance, my cursor is here and it's telling me logical test, and it's giving me an explanation. Logical test is any value or expression that can be evaluated true or false. So what do we want Excel to evaluate, true or false? It is either it's for us to know if sales is greater than our target. If it is true, return 5% of sales. If it is not true, we are not giving any bonus, so return 0. So click OK. It gives us that populate, and that is a simple if. You can see save us time, and it gives us what we want with just a click of a button. That is simple if. Now there are situations where you have a scenario where you have to meet more than one condition for Excel to return a value for you. You are going to meet more than one condition. In that case, it's called multiple if. So when you have a scenario whereby you are going to meet A and B, that means there are two conditions, A and B for you to get C, or you have A or B to get C. That's already more than one condition. That's multiple if. So for multiple if, in a scenario whereby you have more than one condition, you can also use the if function. But there are things you have to use alongside if to return for you the answers that you want. And in this case, we have the and the or as an example of what you could use with if when you have multiple conditions to be met. I'm going to be using this data set to explain that. So we're going to look at two scenarios. Scenario 1, when sales is greater than 20,000, an amount in recovery is less than 10,000, then apply a bonus of 5%. So two conditions must be met. Number one is that your sales should be greater than 20,000 and the amount in recovery should be less than 10,000 naira, which means there are two scenarios and two of them must be met. So with that, we go to our scenario one column under bonus. So I'm going to use the first way of returning our answer, whereby we type in the formula into the cell, and then in the other scenario 2, we'll probably go through the dialog box. So now scenario 1, let's type in our formula, equal if. So now, don't forget, it's going to meet two conditions. Now, what is our logical test? Our logical test is that two conditions must be met. Our sales must be greater than 20,000 and our amount to recovery must be less than 10,000. So with that means there are two scenarios. Two must go together. We will now introduce another function called hand. So that's, don't forget, we are still writing our logical text here. So what is the logic one of hand? The first thing is that sales must be greater than, and where do we have our sales for Mohammed? This is sales here, must be greater than 20,000 naira, right? Secondly, second logical test is that amount in recovery must be less than 10,000. We are done with our logical test. Now, if these two conditions are met, that is our logical test. What do we want it to return? If it is true, return 5% of what? Of sales. 5% of sales. And if not, return 0. So this is it. So we could see that it returns 0 for Mohammed. Now, does it mean Mohammed did not meet the condition? Let's check. Mohammed's sales is 25, which is greater than 20,000 naira. It met the first condition. But the second condition says it must be less than 10,000. It did not meet it because its amount of recovery is 21,000. So that is why Excel returned 0. So now let's populate for others. So you can see two people met these conditions. First person is Kolade. Our sales is 32,000 naira, which is higher than 20,000. And then this is less than 10,000. Conditions, two conditions are met. Both conditions are met. Even for Kolashade, the same thing. So let's go to scenario 2. Scenario 2 says that when sales is greater than 20,000 or amount in recovery is less than 7,500. That means if you meet any of these conditions, you get the bonus, right? So scenario 2. So let's use the dialog box. So now we go to logical and we go to if. Dialog box is open. Now, what is our logical text? Don't forget, two conditions, one of the two conditions should be met. So in that case, we cannot use and. We'll now introduce or. So we have or. The first condition is that sales greater than 20,000. So Mohammed's sales, is it greater than 20,000? Or is his amount in recovery, right, less than 7,500? So these two conditions have to be met. So if you meet any of these conditions, what do you want it to return to? 5%. Apply 5% of the sales as our bonus. If not, return 0. Let's see what it gives us. So it returns for Mohammed. Now, did Mohammed meet any of the two conditions? Let's look at his sales. His sales is greater than 20,000 naira. So he already met that. Even though his amount of recovery is greater than 7,500, he met one of the conditions. Now let's go to Karen that did not meet any of the conditions. You see, Karen's sales is less than 20, and then his amount of recovery is greater than 20. So that is multiple if. The situation whereby you have more than one scenarios or more than one conditions to be met, then you use the multiple if.